toute seule.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar of the European Cluster of Ceramics, dedicated to one of our members, 3D Ceram, located here in Limoges. And this webinar is dedicated today to 3D printing and a special technology of 3D printing called SLA, stereolithography. And today we will know more about biomedical application of SLA 3D printing, and we will show you the story of the first ceramic skull implants printed by this technology. So just before we start, some instruction. You are connected with the microphone off. But I invite you to ask your question using the question box on the right side of the GoToWebinar panel. So do not hesitate if you have any question, any comments about the different video we will show you display in a few minutes. And then we will make a short break. In the middle of the presentation, we'll have a 10-minute break for Q&A session. And also at the end of the webinar, we will have 5 minutes of Q&A. So do not hesitate to write your question here. And I would like to present you all the 3D Ceram team that is connected with us today. And I invite them to make a short roundtable. Maybe Richard Guignon can start. And then we'll turn around the table to present all the experts, all the 8 experts present with us.
Thank you, Florine. I'm Richard Guignon, CEO of 3D Ceram.
I am Christophe Chaput, CEO of 3D Ceram.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Arnaud Roux, in charge of sales in Europe.
Hi, my name is Maxence Bourgeol, APAC Sales Manager for 3D Ceram Cento.
Good morning, I'm Charlie Clark, and I'm a ceramic engineer here at 3D Ceram.
Good morning, I'm Vincent Leclerc, and I'm in charge of after sales.
Good morning, Eric Poitou, in charge of debinding and sintering.
Hello, I'm Karen, marketing manager.
Hello, I'm Martin Nguyen, development engineer.
So we are done. Nobody left.
Thank you, everyone, for this this roundtable. Just a short advertising before we start and launch the video. We will have in June 23rd a new Skin Info Day. If you are interested in surface treatments and functionalization, it deals with the European project we are part of. And also focus on the new events of our cluster. 20th and 21st of October in Limoges, we organize a B2B meetings event called Ceramics for Industry. So you are highly welcome to go on our website if you are interested in, and if you want to be connected with the ceramics industry in France. So now we have finished with the introduction, and we will now launch the first video presented by 3D Ceram, and we will see how SLA works, and we will talk about the 3D printing of the first ceramic skull implants, and also about different steps of the process. Alexandra, you can go further with the video.
Hello, welcome to Limoges, and welcome to the new industrial site of 3D Ceram. My name is Richard Guignon. I am the co-founder and the co-president of 3D Ceram. I invite you for a visit of this industrial building. Follow me. So this is the brand new building of 3D Ceram. We moved in February 2021. But 3D Ceram is not a new company. It was created 20 years ago in Limoges, where we are right now, you know, in the middle of France. Why Limoges? For 2 reasons. One, it is the center of porcelain in France, where we have many porcelain companies. And the second one, which is the most important, we are a spin-off of a technical center. What are the values of Sudiciram? This piece of art represents really the values of Sudiciram: the commitment, the team spirit. We are a big family, and the multi-activity. So this is what is represented here with what we like, which means a high sense of humor. Now, let's have a look at several applications that we develop with our technology, the SLA technology. So one of the first applications we did here at Sudiciram was biomedical application. You all know the skull implant that we did in 2007. More than 50 people are living with a skull implant made by Sudiciram, made of hydroxyapatite, actually. So it's a technology that we master for a long time. We did also some teeth or mandibula made of zirconia, and this we did that in 2005. Bone substitutes made of hydroxyapatite or TCP, and this is an ongoing production at our customer facility. But we have also new products, brackets, implant for the teeth that we developed recently, and we have very high quality results. Now what I propose is to show you the technology that we use, the SLA, and to explain why we believe SLA is an industrial solution and not not a solution only for laboratory equipment. So you can see, even if we are 20 years old company, we still have the startup spirit. We do sports here, we do events to have really the commitment of our employees. So let me introduce the technology we use, the SLA technology with a laser on the top. Why do we use SLA? You know, we have already 20 years experience, so that's a good point. The second point is you can have the same accuracy even for large printing area. We have machine we can print up to 600 times 600. So you cannot achieve this with any other technology than SLA. The second point is FreeLink technology. We have no support attached to the part, and that's a big advantage to have no cracks in the final parts. We have also the slurries. In our company, the slurries are stable for months, when others are stable for weeks or even less. And we have a wide range of products, of materials that we are going to introduce you, like silicium nitride and so on, and a wide range of machine. So this is the only solution to industrialize the process. Having the laser on the top, we can have machine that really can be automatized, and we have automatic handling system. Now what I propose you is to show you other applications that we develop with our technology. So I show you some applications for biomedical application, but our customers are also using our printers to print parts for the space industry or the aircraft industry. For the space industry, we have very nice application with silicium nitride material. We have a wide range of material, about 12 mix that we are going to introduce you later on. And another customer is making mirrors, so small or bigger mirrors than this one. And we are very proud of this type of application. We have also some aircraft application, mostly for the core application. So we have developed a joint venture with Avignon Ceramic. The name of this joint venture is U3DC. And we made cores, or we develop solutions. We don't make cores, but we develop solutions for the customers to be able to print cores and to use it as a normal cores in the production of turbine blades. So here you have the core inside the wax, and here you have the turbine blade that we got after pouring casting the alloy. So I talk about biomedical application, about aircraft application. So, and now what is very important for us is to create some partnership. Like for the biomedical, we have a partnership with Gregory Nolens, who is an advisor for us. we have this joint venture for the cores, and we are ready to create more and more partnership to speed up the development of this technology, because we are convinced the technology is the right one to industrialize the process. You know, we have the experience, we have the right technology, we master the process, and we are ready to help you to develop it as fast as possible. Now, a very important point, you know, we have the material, we have the machine, we have also the software, and Marc Nguyen is going to introduce you the new software we develop, Build It. Build It is a software which helps the customers to create the supports in a very efficient way and very friendly way. Thank you, Marc.
Thank you, Richard. Hi, my name is Marc, and I would like to present the digital process steps before printing a biomedical part, for example. As you probably know, the first step is to have a 3D file of the part to be printed, and it is really strategic to have the right file format, which is STL1. In biomedical, there are two common ways to get the STL file. Some parts can be generated by a 3D scanner made on a patient. In this case, the file generated is directly a STL file, also called a mesh. Some parts can be generated directly in a 3D modeling software and then exported to the STL file format. So now we have the 3D model, and we can get to the next step, which is to prepare the file for the ceramics 3D printing technology. Working with ceramics introduces some anticipation in the digital process. We need to anticipate the shrinkage due to thermal post-process. We also need to anticipate specificities of the SLA process. All those steps can be done with our software CPS, which stands for Ceramaker Printing Software. It will allow you to keep focus on the design of the part to be printed and will help you to successfully print it. First step is to load the part in CPS. Some visualization lines will allow you to see the building area available depending on the machine and platform size used. I will start by placing the part on the building platform. I can check if my part has some errors. I can also fix it if needed. I can check the thickness of the part to identify thin and thick areas. It will help decide if I need to change the design of the part as a function of the process and post-process capabilities. Then I will apply a scale factor to anticipate shrinkage due to debinding and sintering stage. The shrinkage is not equal in the three directions. I can now apply Z compensation on my part to anticipate curing depths. This is common in SLA process. In order to successfully print the part, it sometimes requires a support. And here our Build It plugin is very helpful. It allows to create the support directly on STL files and without particular knowledge in CAD design. By defining functional parameters, it will automatically generate a support structure depending on the geometry. It will save a lot of time and allow you to really focus on the design of the part and not on the support design. Once the part is prepared with its support, we recommend to apply specific presets to the models generated before duplicating. By doing this, the parameters will automatically be copied to each duplicated model. The last step is to compile the receipt in order to see if everything is correctly set and also to have a look to the preview. The preview is an important tool which allows to check the laser path at each layer. You can then identify printing layers which could be problematic and modify the print preparation to avoid issues. If the preview is satisfactory, then you can start the print. Now, let's introduce our machine range.
Thank you, Marc. My name is Maxence Bourjol, APAC Sales Manager for 3D Serum Sinto. Let me say a few words about our smaller printer. Let me introduce the C100 Easy we launched 2 years ago. We designed the C100 Easy as a user-friendly printer with a small printing platform of 100 by 100 by 150 mm. It is what we can call the entry-level printer for laboratories, research center, R&D departments, or any user who want to develop their own formulation. Indeed, the C100 Easy offers an open system with full possibility to develop a material and its printing parameters. Actually, the C100 Easy makes possible all the necessary adjustments of printing parameters, such as the laser power and the laser speed, to adapt them. And then, as all our printers use the same process with same formulation, when the design or the application is developed, the possibility to scale up is easy and quick. As our first activity at 3D Serum was to print parts on demand, we have acknowledged the critical points to answer users' needs. Easy to use, easy maintenance, also possible online, an open system, a possible scale-up of the R&D results to reach the mass customization, the possibility to create and develop its own slurries and printing parameters, and the possibility to launch a printing run with few amount of formulation, only few milliliters, a crucial point for the user who wants to formulate, and particularly when the raw material is expensive. As I told you when I introduced the C100 Easy, this is the entry-level printer of our range. Now, Vincent Auclair will talk about our historical printer, the well-named C900 Flex.
Thank you, Maxence. Hello, my name is Vincent Auclair, and I'm in charge of the after-sales services here at 3D Ceram Center. Our technology, the SLA, has been developed on our historical and most versatile printer, which I'm about to show you, the C900 Flex. This is also the most versatile one in our range, probably because it benefits from 15 years of ceramic 3D printing know-how. There is more than 40 of those printers in various facilities around the world. What makes this printer great is its versatility, which means that you can print on 3 different platform sizes, 100, 200, or 300 millimeters per 300 with a maximum possible height of 100 millimeters. It gives you the advantages of adapting the printing platform to what you truly need, reducing the quantity of materials, the man hours, and the printing time to what is necessary for your parts. All those also means savings. We have developed another option, which is called SAM. The SAM allows you to optimize your mix consumption by printing locally and use only a small amount of materials instead of the building platform full length. The SLA technology used by the 3D Ceram printers is involving a UV laser polymerizing a mix of organic binders and ceramic powders, specially developed by us, creating a matrix of ceramic materials. This mix is printed from the bottom to the top, allowing to print firing freestanding supports at the same time as the parts needed. Because the C900 Flex is our first printer, a lot of different materials have been developed by the 3D Ceram teams to work on this machine, such as cordierite, silicon nitride, aluminum nitride, zirconia, HIP, or TCP, for example. The skull implants printed by 3D Ceram for Joël Brie have been printed with HIP. The C900 Flex uses our open software, CPS, that allows you to work with your own mixes and develop your own laser parameters if you want to. This interface is coupled with Build It, that, as Mark demonstrated to you earlier on, will help you to create your support for the parts, making the printing experience much easier to any newcomer to the technology. I will now leave you with Arnaud Roux, who will introduce to you the C3600 Ultimate.
Thank you, Vincent. I'm Arnaud Roux, in charge of sales development in Europe. Let me present you the C3600 Ultimate, the solution to mass customization. This machine has been designed with industrialization in mind, with its large printing area and a quick swap out of the build platform, helping to increase productivity. This is the largest industrial printer for technical ceramics on the market, with a build area of 600 millimeter by 600 millimeter and 300 millimeter in Z-axis. We have been able to develop this printer for technical ceramics thanks to the choice of our technology, the stereolithography with laser, and the top-down strategy. You have the possibility to print big parts. For a faster printing run, there are 4 lasers working together on the whole platform. So the printing time is vastly reduced. For example, this Maro printed in alumina only took 28 hours. We are talking about mass customization. So of course, having such a large platform allows you to produce big series of small parts. One of the benefits of this machine is to decrease the price per part. You reduce printing time, you save slurry, so you reduce the cost. We have been calculating the return on investment with customers, a key indicator in the choice of machine. And we concluded that we could reach a 50% drop in the price per part. 3D Ceram has been able to test the viability of mass production with AM, and it works. As we saw with the C100, you can be innovative, develop different parts before scaling up to the C3600 Ultimate for mass printing. And they share a similar process, same laser, same formulations, and same software. A production unit in customized industry. Let's continue the tour following the process, cleaning of the parts. Your turn, Charlie.
Thank you, Arno. So let's talk about the cleaning. After printing, regardless of the machine, the next part of the fabrication process is to clean the pieces, ready for the firing stage. The first step is to remove the pieces from the machine. With the help of some cleaning tools, a preliminary clean immediately takes place after printing in order to recover as much unused formulation as possible. Once this is finished, the pieces can be easily removed from the plate and they can begin to be cleaned under the extractor hood. The extractor hood is essential for cleaning the pieces, with the aid of a mixture of compressed air and our own cleaning product, Ceraclean. The mixture is sprayed through a nozzle for higher accuracy cleaning. To work with the cleaning post, you will need to wear some basic safety equipment. The pressure to use for the extractor hood depends on the geometry of the pieces to be cleaned. If the parts are substantial, then it is possible to clean with 3 bars of pressure. If the pieces are very fine or delicate, then the pressure can be reduced to 2 bars or maybe even less. The cleaning post possesses a manometer, which is used to determine the pressure output, giving the user more control over the process. Under the extractor hood, we start by cleaning around the pieces before delicately removing them from the support. Afterwards, the pieces are thoroughly cleaned with the nozzle, but for more complex pieces, it is sometimes necessary to perform an ultrasound bath to ensure that all the unpolymerized material has been removed. It is important that all the unpolymerized material has been removed from the pieces before proceeding to the firing stage. It is advised to begin cleaning the pieces as soon as possible after printing, and then following on to place them in the kiln. However, it's possible to keep the green parts as printed for a few days before cleaning and also between the cleaning step and the debinding step. Therefore, in an industrial context, the pieces usually go through the different stages in quick succession, but the possibility to space apart the different steps brings a certain flexibility to the production line.
We are back again. Thank you for this first tour at 3D Ceram, for the explanation of the SLA technology, and we have time now for some questions that I will read for you. Maybe I can reformulate the first one that deals with powder bed. I think it's maybe you can give us some explanation about the advantages of using slurry feedstock instead of powder bed application of technology. If you understand just as me this first question, experts of 3D Ceram.
Well, yeah, for sure. The definition of stereolithography is based on slurry. So, I mean, it's correct. I mean, it's based on slurry and not powder bed. If it's powder bed, it's a powder bed technology. If it's SLA, it's a slurry technology. Yeah.
And can you tell us about the advantages using slurry instead of powder bed? Can you compare in a few words about the two technologies?
difficult to compare both technologies. Both technologies have pros and cons, and I would say that they do not apply for the same application. Powder bed, I mean, I'm not relevant to talk about it, but if you want to make big products with a porosity inside, like the shape for casting, you know, that's a good technology, I would say. So stereolithography is normally used when you want to get a highly dense product with a high definition, smooth surface, and the best properties. So I would say that, well, today we are talking about medical application, but we mentioned, you know, space application, medical application. We're also talking about energy, environment, and many others. I would say that if you want to give you an idea, SLA could be compared to injection molding. So I would say it's about the same market that they address. Someone wants?
No, it's correct.
Thank you for this answer. Another question about what type of ceramics are you using for biomedical application?
Typically for medical application, we are using calcium phosphate, could be HEP, with a ratio between calcium and phosphor of 1.67, or TCP, which is the same chemical composition, but with a lower ratio between calcium and phosphate. The main difference between these two materials are that normally HEP is a permanent material in the body, so you have no dissolution of HEP in the body. And with TCP, you can have a long dissolution into the body. And this material is used when you expect to have a bone growth in the body to replace the implant of TCP. So for sterile implant, for example, it is very large defect, and it's not possible to have on so large defect a bone growth. You can have a bone growth only around 1 centimeter around the implant. So that's the reason why we use TCP. After, it's clearly the materials used for bone substitutes. After, if you are thinking about implant for articulation, knee, hip, fingers, etc. So typically we use zirconia or ZTA, zirconia reinforced with alumina. And also we are using also alumina. This is the 4 or 5 main materials, ceramic main materials for biomedical application.
Okay, thank you for this complete answer. We have a question about surface roughness of the parts. What kind of surface roughness?
So with the surface roughness after the sintering of the part and without any post-treatments, to give you a rough idea, it is between 1 and 2 micrometers just after sintering and without any post-treatment.
We are sometimes using tumbling, so it's a method of polishing, and we achieve between 0.1 to 0.2 microns.
Okay, thank you. Could you tell us more on dual printer option and possible application?
We're not sure we understand the question. So is it mentioning the SAM system, or because we don't see which dual hybrid or hybrid?
Hybrid printer, I think the with the hybrid printer, maybe multi-material printer.
Yes, you're right. So at FODESIRAM, we developed since 3 years a hybrid printer in order to print more than 1 material on the same time. The first point to say is that the hybrid option is available for the CERAMECR 900 Flex and the CERAMECR 100 Easy. So thanks to this hybrid option on our printers, it is possible for our users to print more than 1 material at the same time. It could be ceramic with another ceramic, ceramic with metal, ceramic with plastic, or ceramic with another material if you have another idea. For example, if we are focused on the ceramic metal application, it could be used for HTCC, LTCC, and so on.
Also, we have some users who print ceramic with another ceramic in order to shape that we can call functionally graded material. So you can print, for example, alumina and silicon nitride with a different variation of composition in order to decrease the coefficient of thermal expansion between both. It is two typical kind of application for the hybrid printers.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting question about multi-material. We have also a question about the clinical results you obtain on the ceramic scaling plants. Do you have any return of experiments?
Yes, I mean, there will be in the second part, we will talk about it. So I suggest that if the answer is not clear during the presentation, that we can answer at that time. So I will prefer to skip that question and to go through the second part of the videos.
You're right. You're right. The second part of the video will answer some kind of this question. We have time for 2 or 3 questions more. What are the maximum densities and sintering temperature with SLA for alumina and zirconia?
In fact, the maximum temperature is not really linked to the process, but more to the material. So typically with our paste, the maximum temperature of sintering for alumina is 100-700 degrees Celsius, and for zirconia, 100-500 degrees Celsius. But I want to insist that we have 2 kinds of things to take into account. One is the process, the other is the materials. So temperature of sintering is more linked to the materials. If you use, for example, nano alumina, you will reach lower temperature of the sintering. If you use a coarser alumina, you will have a higher temperature of sintering, but really depending of what you want to obtain as grade of alumina. There is not only one grade of alumina or one grade of zirconia, depending of the application.
So basically the density is between 98 and 99%, and that's what Christophe wanted to say. And the temperature is depending on the grade of material we put inside. So it's not linked to SLA actually.
A question about the mechanical properties. What kind of parameters are given the mechanical properties in ceramic printing? If some parameters are having any influence during the printing technology process on the mechanical properties at the end.
Higher the grain density is, higher the mechanical properties are better. Okay, so that means that in function of the alumina or zirconia you are using, if you obtain a dense green body, you will obtain a green dense ceramic after. So in all our formulation, we have a solid loading with a very high solid loading. That's the reason why we started to use paste, and now we reach to obtain the same solid loading in our cream that we have on paste. So it's the certification that you will have after sintering a very good density of ceramic.
So that was the question you answered, was the sort of ceramic loading we are using. So it's about 50% up to 65%. But Florine was mentioning another question, is what kind of parameter is affecting mechanical properties of in ceramic printing.
Okay, so the parameter, in one time, again, you have to separate the quality of the product and the quality of the process. The parameter on the product is the size of the product. If you have a very small grain size, you will have a higher mechanical strength on your materials. And if you have a good grain density, you will have a better mechanical strength after sintering.
Okay, thank you. I think the Q&A session is over now before we launch the second video. And we have time at the end of the video to answer to the last questions. So Alexandra, you can launch now the second video.
The thermal treatment has to be anticipated and thought upstream from the design of the part, so you increase the chance of success. Indeed, some parameters have to be considered when designing the part, such as wall thickness, too thick or too heterogeneous. Complex geometries, which won't take into account the possible internal stresses without any relaxing area. Deficient possibilities for gas exhaust during the binder burnout. Create enough gas exhaust opportunities during the binder step to eliminate all of it. Ceramic material sensitivity to avoid deformation during thermal treatment. After the design, the formulation, and the shaping by 3D printing comes the thermal treatment, which can be divided into successive steps depending on the manufacturing process and the technical devices available. Debinding and sintering. The experience of the operators and the knowledge of their production tools, such as dryers and ovens, are also essential criteria for the success of these steps. These two steps are critical to guarantee the final integrity of the ceramic parts and thus obtain an object with desired characteristics. All the parameters, such as the densification level, the nature of the materials and its crystalline phase, the size of the grains, optimal dimensions, good mechanical, thermal, optical properties are depending on the thermal treatment. After shaping, the ceramic parts are sensitive to any changes in their surroundings parameters. This is inherent to the ceramic material as moisture, temperature, pressure, support storage. These parameters have to be controlled and mastered to limit the development of excessive internal stresses from which cracks and potential defects will result. The drying stage is not too complex and long thanks to the use of organics additive less sensitive to the environment. Depending on the production chain you are looking for, and in case of large production, you should anticipate the storage of the parts before the debinding step. What is the debinding? The debinding consists of extracting all the components added for the ceramic shaping: dispersants, binders, plasticizers, and solvents. The debinding stage is critical. It must be controlled to extract the organic parts of the shaped products while retaining the physical integrity of the residual ceramic skeleton. This is usually done in an atmosphere-controlled oven in a temperature range from room temperature to sometimes 1000 degrees C. This operation is very slow, often several days, to allow a very gradual evacuation of organic materials. At the end of the debinding, the parts are mechanically very brittle because the ceramic powders are no longer maintained by the organic binders, and the maximum temperature reached during the debinding are too low to obtain a solid ceramic structure. So, after debinding, the final stage of thermal treatment is the sintering. The debinding parts undergo a new thermal treatment in another category of furnaces that can reach very high temperature, over 1000 degrees C. The porous ceramic structure obtained after debinding will become dense and the object will undergo a strong shrinkage to reach its final dimension, 10 to 25% of the green part. The small ceramic grains, until then, only in contact will bind very strongly and grow until you obtain the porosity and the mechanical properties you are looking for. This sintering time will depend on the ceramic formulation, the wanted microstructure, but also on the size of the part and the oven capacity. 3D CRM knowledge has allowed the development and achievement of skull implant with 3D printing in HEP material. This is what Joël Bouy is about to tell you in the coming interview.
Je fais de la reconstruction du squelette crânio-facial, qui est un squelette très particulier avec des formes très particulières, et on avait beaucoup de mal à reconstruire la forme en fait de façon parfaite. Donc l'impression 3D nous a permis d'accéder à des pièces sur mesure. Et donc quand Christophe est venu nous présenter le projet, c'était c'était une attente très forte pour nous de disposer de pièces sur mesure qui est la forme idéale.
Et ça, c'était en quelle année?
On a dû commencer à avoir des échanges.
99, ouais, 2000, 2001, je sais pas. Voilà, 2000, ouais. Ben, en fait, pour pouvoir mettre sur le marché un dispositif médical implantable, il faut passer par un certain nombre d'étapes. Donc vous avez en gros des essais cliniques d'abord de faisabilité. Donc en fait, la première phase, c'est une phase où on va valider le process valider la possibilité de l'utiliser et valider le fait que ça puisse donner des bons résultats. Et ensuite, il faut passer à une étape supplémentaire qui est l'étude d'efficacité où on va augmenter le nombre de patients pour arriver à, comment dirais-je, à une preuve absolue de l'efficacité. Une fois qu'on a eu passé cette étape d'étude de faisabilité, ensuite il y a eu une demande de marquage CE en fait. Et une fois qu'on a obtenu le marquage CE, parce qu'on avait continué après l'étude préliminaire, en fait, on avait continué à accumuler les cas, puisqu'on est à 24 cas ou quelque chose comme ça, une vingtaine de cas.
Que vous avez implanté?
Oui. Donc on avait du recul et on était capable de produire des preuves d'efficacité, d'innocuité, enfin, etc. Parce que sur les 24 cas, il n'y a eu aucune dépose d'implant, il n'y a eu aucune complication et aucun implant n'a été déposé en raison d'une infection. Ou...
Donc, Joël, quelles sont les indications pour poser ce type de prothèse?
Alors en fait, pour moi, la grande indication, c'est soit des paires de substances de très grande taille qu'on ne peut pas combler avec de l'os du patient. Donc pour le crâne, c'est essentiellement les cranioplasties, c'est-à-dire des paires de substances osseuses de la voûte crânienne qui vont être supérieures à 100 cm². On va dire que jusqu'à 100 cm², on peut se débrouiller avec d'autres process qui sont acceptables. Voilà, tu peux faire du volet dédoublé ou des grilles de titane avec du ciment en hydroxyapatite. Et passer 100 cm², la prothèse sur mesure est absolument indispensable. Après, il y a tout le segment 25 100 cm² où là, on peut jouer sur les deux tableaux. C'est-à-dire on peut utiliser soit la prothèse sur mesure, soit d'autres systèmes. Mais la prothèse sur mesure est déjà mieux, donne de meilleurs résultats. Et passer 100 cm², c'est-à-dire 10 par 10, un hémicrâne, hein, ça se fait. C'est-à-dire qu'après, on ne peut pas reproduire le volume, on peut pas. Et puis, il y a des problèmes de contraintes mécaniques.
Et les pathologies, là, tu dis les indications, ça c'est en termes de surface, mais les pathologies initiales qui conduisent à ces pertes de substances, c'est quoi?
En gros, alors sûrement le débouché, enfin l'indication la plus fréquente, ça va être les volets décompressifs qui ne sont pas remis en place ou qui sont résorbés.
Trauma de la route.
Voilà, c'est-à-dire que c'est un traumatisme crânien avec l'augmentation de la pression intracrânienne. Il y a un œdème cérébral qui se développe après le traumatisme et il faut enlever une partie de la voûte du crâne pour que le cerveau puisse s'expandre, pour pas que le cerveau souffre. Donc, pour sauver le patient, il faut enlever, ça peut être un hémicrâne. Hein. Les volets décompressifs, c'est des volets qui sont très, très importants. Alors, ils sont mis à la banque de tissu. Ils sont envoyés à la banque de tissu. Et,
donc l'os du patient est
sauvegardé. Il est gardé avec l'idée de le remettre une fois que l'œdème aura disparu.
Et c'est combien de temps après ça?
Ouais, ça peut être plusieurs mois. Hein. C'est plusieurs mois. Et une fois que le cerveau a repris sa place, en fait, on va essayer de remettre en place ce volet. Alors le problème, c'est qu'à la banque d'os, très souvent, le volet est contaminé en fait dans les manipulations qui ont conduit à le stocker en fait, soit dans le stock. Alors après, il y a des prélèvements qui sont faits avant de le remettre en place et souvent le liquide dans lequel il était stocké est contaminé. Donc on ne peut pas l'utiliser.
Expliquez-nous un petit peu les avantages de la céramique par rapport à d'autres matériaux qui sont aujourd'hui disponibles et proposés dans le cadre d'un plan comme ça.
C'est pas très compliqué. Au jour d'aujourd'hui, on distingue trois grandes familles de biomatériaux, première génération, deuxième génération, troisième génération. Pour faire simple, les biomatériaux de première génération sont des matériaux bio-inertes, c'est-à-dire que l'organisme les accepte, mais il n'y a pas d'interaction entre le matériau et l'organisme. Les matériaux de deuxième génération vont interagir avec le milieu vivant, en fait. Et par exemple, l'ostéoinduction est une propriété de deuxième génération, c'est-à-dire le fait d'être capable d'induire la fabrication d'os par l'interaction avec l'organisme. Donc ça, c'est le propre des phosphates de calcium, en fait, de tous les matériaux à base de phosphate et de calcium. Donc hydroxyapatite, tricalcium phosphate, biphasique, etc. Donc ça, c'est des matériaux de deuxième génération. Donc là, il va y avoir, si on crée des parties poreuses, il peut y avoir une colonisation de l'implant par du tissu osseux. Dans le cadre des polymères, il n'y a pas de colonisation de l'implant. L'implant est massif il est posé, il est fixé solidement à l'os, mais il n'y a pas de bio-intégration à proprement parler de l'implant. Donc il y a des risques de rejet, en fait de rejet entre guillemets, c'est-à-dire d'infection qui sont beaucoup plus importants parce que l'implant est fixé rigidement avec des plaques qui sont un peu épaisses et il ne sera jamais considéré comme un élément du corps, il ne sera jamais vraiment bio-intégré. Il sera là. Dans les premières cranioplasties, elles étaient faites avec des ciments en polyméthylmétacrylate. C'est le ciment qui sert à sceller les prothèses de hanche en orthopédie. Et c'était en gros 20% d'échecs à cause des problèmes infectieux.
Et là, sur les implants...
J'ai une très jolie photo d'un... Je viens d'en retirer un là, qui était là depuis 20 ans. La patiente est arrivée avec l'implant à poil. Toute la peau avait été détruite au-dessus de l'implant. Et en fait, l'implant était à l'air libre. Aucun. Et on a fait même un travail de thèse dessus où on a montré que plus de 50% de la... Parce qu'en fait, l'implant qu'on utilisait avait une structure un peu particulière, puisqu'on sait très bien que la colonisation d'un implant est quand même limitée, hein, c'est-à-dire que ça ne va pas jusqu'au fond si l'implant est très massif. La colonisation par du tissu osseux va se faire sur le premier centimètre, mais pas au-delà. Donc, fort de ça, on avait décidé d'avoir une partie poreuse à la périphérie, avoir un lien avec le tissu osseux vivant.
Que vous pouvez peut-être nous
Oui. C'est ce qu'on voit très bien entre les trous de fixation. Voilà, cette prothèse est parfaite. Donc, vous avez une partie dense au milieu avec une porosité de surface. Parce que ça, c'est important pour que les tissus mous puissent venir se fixer sur la prothèse. Après, vous aviez des parties denses ici en périphérie qui était l'endroit des trous de fixation en fait de la prothèse. Et entre les trous, entre les trous de fixation, vous avez une partie poreuse. Et en fait, sur l'étude qu'on a fait, au bout d'un an, 75% de la périphérie était liée en fait. On voyait très bien la fusion entre le tissu osseux environnant et la prothèse. Et donc après, vous avez, parce que là, vous n'avez pas de problème. Là, il y a une fixation primaire qui se faisait avec des fils résorbables. Et la fixation secondaire de l'implant, elle était le fruit de cette ostéo-intégration, en fait, de ces ponts osseux qui se fabriquaient entre le... Ce qui fait que l'implant était parfaitement stable, était parfaitement intégré. Quand vous avez un implant en polymère, vous n'avez pas de liaison os-implant. Vous avez une membrane qui se forme entre les deux. La stabilité est due juste au système de fixation qui vient aux plaques et aux vis qui le maintiennent. Donc, il peut y avoir des micro-mouvements, il peut y avoir, et on sait très bien que c'est les micro-mouvements à l'interface entre les implants et l'os natif qui entraînent le rejet, en fait. Le fait de reconstruire le crâne, ça n'a pas qu'une fonction cosmétique ou de protection, ça améliore le fonctionnement du cerveau, en fait. On appelle ça le skin flap syndrome, c'est-à-dire quand il n'y a pas l'os, la pression atmosphérique s'exerce directement sur le cerveau. Et le fait de reconstruire, ça améliore les fonctions cognitives et le fonctionnement du cerveau. Et donc, cette patiente qui n'était quasiment plus parlante, elle avait fait un AVC. Un hémicrâne, donc c'était fronto-pariéto-occipital. Enfin, ça faisait 150 cm². Donc, c'était énorme. Elle était dans un fauteuil et elle ne parlait plus. Et à partir du moment où son mari est venu un jour en consulte et m'a expliqué que à table, elle lui avait dit 2 mots que je ne sais plus, c'est à propos de haricots verts, je crois. C'est trop salé ou c'est trop. Et il dit c'était les premières paroles qu'elle prononçait. Voilà, il semble que la prothèse ait amélioré le fonctionnement de son cerveau.
Elle avait un problème de mobilité.
Et elle n'était pas du tout marchante et elle avait commencé à faire quelques pas, à marcher dans le couloir. Voilà. Je vois bien qu'au niveau du front, j'ai pas ce rendu. J'ai pas les parties fines, enfin là c'est collé, mais sur la partie externe de l'implant, les parties sont très très fines, ça vient vraiment en continuité. Les plaques en titane, il y a 2 mm d'épaisseur, de surépaisseur. Ah bah tu sens les vis, tu sens le truc. La peau du front, c'est une peau qui est très fine, et qui, tu vois, par exemple, sur les...
Le gars, il sent qu'il a...
Voilà, mais tu sais, c'est arrivé avec c'est toutes les prothèses. C'est pour ça que cette technologie était supérieure à la technologie italienne qui était une technologie par moulage, où ils n'avaient pas de partie fine, c'est-à-dire qu'ils moulaient la paire de substances, mais il y avait une rupture de continuité entre l'implant et l'os natif. Voilà, et donc il y a un patient où on voyait clairement la forme de l'implant, parce que la peau avait glissé dans cet interstice, et donc ça faisait un sillon. Et avec le titane, vous avez une surchape de 2 mm. Donc une surchape de 2 mm, ça veut dire qu'à un moment donné, pouf, il va y avoir un aplomb, il va y avoir une petite marche d'escalier qui n'est pas grande, mais la peau, elle va suivre la marche d'escalier. Et donc vous allez sentir les vis, vous allez sentir. Et les patients, il y en a qui sont très mécontents à cause de ça. Il y a des relargages d'ion titane qui se font à la périphérie, ça entraîne une réaction inflammatoire autour de l'implant. Ils ont tous été enlevés. Parce qu'en fait, il devait y avoir des relargages d'ion titane, et les ions titane sont des éléments très inflammatoires, très pro-inflammatoires. Donc vous avez une inflammation de l'os se résorbe autour de l'implant, et comme c'est une grosse vis, si vous perdez votre pas de vis, c'est les fils résorbables qui sont passés. Donc on faisait un trou dans l'os là, et on passait un fil résorbable, ce qui fait qu'on percevait aucun matériel. C'est pour ça que le résultat était proche de la perfection. Parce qu'on avait ces parties fines, parce qu'on avait cette ostéo-intégration, parce que le matériel de fixation n'était pas perceptible du tout. Et donc tous les patients ces fils ont disparu en fait. Hein. Et si vous y retournez, vous n'avez que l'implant, l'os, et vous avez un continuum parfait entre l'implant et l'os. Sur le long terme, j'aimerais bien voir ce que deviennent les. Et puis j'ai les retours de mes collègues neurochirurgiens, puisqu'on posait avec les neurochirurgiens en fait. Et sur le front, sur tout ça, ils ne sont pas très satisfaits des prothèses en titane.
I will start by answering how we develop biomedical application. In fact, I started to work on 3D printing a long time ago, and I was dreaming to apply this technology to biomedical field. So I went to the hospital of Limoges. I met the head surgeon of neurosurgery department, and I asked him, is it possible to develop custom implant? Are you interested to develop custom implant for your patient? And he told me, yes, there is an interest, especially for maxillofacial application. So I met Joël Brie, a young surgeon who was passionate by developing solutions to repair his patient. And we have developed a very complex skull implant, very large skull implant. It will be more or less half of the skull. And we developed this solution to be able to produce implant directly from the scanner of the hospital. It was really passionate to develop this, because when you are working on innovation, you are often frustrated by the fact that it's difficult to explain what is the interest of your innovation. It's a very technical field and very complex to communicate with other people on what you are doing exactly. And when you explain that with your technology, you are able to repair patients, it's very rewarding to see that what you have spent so much time to work on this new technology, and you see that with your technology, you change the life of the people. We were also interested to develop application for space industry. In space, you have two main business, the traditional one, where you use very big satellite of 4 or 5 tons. Technical solution already exists for this application. But you have also a new business, what we call the new space, where we use a smaller satellite of 100, 200 kilograms, but you replace big satellite by several small satellites. So ceramic materials are really adapted to space industry. Why? Because it is a light and stiff materials. And when you combine this quality of materials to 3D printing, you can promote and you can develop very complex solution to answer to the issue that they can meet to develop this small satellite. There is two main field of application. So optical system, you use ceramic as a mirror or support of mirrors, and also you can use ceramic for telecommunication.
In these two fields, we propose new parts of ceramic, new geometry of ceramic to answer to the issue of space industry. In the next future, we will be very proud because one of our parts will be integrated on a small satellite. And I can imagine how it will be satisfying to look the sky during the night and imagine that one of our parts doing by our technology will be in the space. Now we want to be engaged in what will be the most important thing for the world in the future. I'm speaking about the sustainable development. Clearly, with the global warming, a lot of things will be changed in the next 10 years. We know that our way of life have to be changed. We have to adapt how we will produce in the future. 3D printing could be an answer to this. Why? Because the transport is really a problem. Every time we see that the transport of foods, transport of goods, transport of energy is based on fossil energy. And we have to reduce the use of fossil energy and to promote other way of consumption. With 3D printing, we can bring two answers to this issue. First, with 3D printing, you can produce locally. So that means that you can avoid the transport of goods to answer to the request of the customer. This is the first thing where we can answer to the global warming, to the sustainable development by 3D printing. Avoid the transport. The second things where we can participate to the sustainable development is the production of energy. Why? Because ceramic is a very good materials to produce energy. Typically, as for space, the quality of materials is typically adapted because it's stiff and light. For energy, ceramic is good material because it resists to heat, to corrosion, and with 3D printing we can produce also very complex structure and maximize. Typically, we can maximize the ratio between surface and volume. Why it is important? Because when you produce energy, you transform, for example, heat into electricity, you transform chemical reaction into electricity. And when you maximize the reaction by increasing the ratio between surface and volume, you improve the efficiency of the system. So this is the second step where we can help the sustainable development, or we can participate to the reduction of global warming by improving the efficiency of the production of energy. Clearly, additive manufacturing is one of the solutions we can promote, have a better life in the next 10 years.
Thank you very much for this second part, for the interview of Joël Brie and an overview of the next coming developments at 3D CERAM by Christophe Chaput. We are almost perfectly on time, but I think we have 2-3 questions left interesting to answer, and I will read it right now. Could you give us indication of the mechanical properties achievable after sintering process in comparison with conventional forming process of ceramics?
So clearly, all the development we have done is to have similar properties materials with other ceramic processes. So if we characterize our material after sintering, we find that we have a good density, more than 98% of 98% density. We have good mechanical properties, typically 400 megapascal for alumina, 1000 megapascal for zirconia, and even Thales, the French group Thales, shown that the mechanical properties of our silicon nitride is better than those obtained by isostatic pressing. Why? Because with 3D printing, you can reduce the machining step to prepare the sample, and you create less defect, and creating less defect, you improve the mechanical properties because, as you know, ceramic materials are brittle materials, so very sensible to small defect. And 3D printing could be one option to reduce the defect obtained after machining. So clearly, one word, similar properties to other ceramic processes.
Okay, it's clear. We have a question about the thinnest parts you can print with SLA technology. Is there a limitation or lower limitation in terms of thickness?
When printing ceramics, you can achieve walls that are a millimeter thin very easily. And when you start to print complex pieces with structures and overhangs, you are able to print. We have on the C900 the FreeLink technology, which enables you to print without the need of support, which obviously reduces time and with machining and costs. Again, the different parameters depend on what materials you are printing with.
Yeah, so it's not so easy to say 1 millimeter, 0.1 millimeter, 0.2 millimeter. It's really depending on the material we are going to use. And second, the shape of the part we are going to print. So maybe we can talk with Mr. Swininski later on, or the guy who is asking the question. He can contact us and we can give him more detail about the different entry point to determine the minimum thickness. But the machine itself, it has a 10 micron on the Z-axis, and the laser sport is about 30 microns. So it gives you a rough idea of the resolution we can achieve.
Okay, thank you, Richard. The very last question, because it's time to conclude now. What about reusing of materials? Is there an issue with that?
Well, we can reuse the material several times. For the trim that we're using on the C100 and the C3600, we can filter the material when it comes off the machine and reuse it probably as many times as you want, as long as it is in the
right conditions.
In the right condition, yeah. We normally suggest to use the paste within 6 months of its making, but you can use it as many times as you want during those 6 months.
Okay, thank you very much.
Within a certain temperature range, you know, if it's 40 degrees while you print, okay, the aging of the slurry will go faster. So if you control the temperature and no UV light, because as you understood, the slurry are reacting with UV, so better to avoid.
Okay, thank you for all these answers. We have many questions more, but I think it's time to close, and I think we will give the question report to the expert team of 3D CRAM, so that you can have connection with the participants today, that I will thank again for the interest. There are many questions proving the interest in the SLA technology. And thank you again to the big work made in 3D CRAM for these two amazing videos. And I would like to wish you a good day and see you soon to our next webinars. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Florine and Peg, for the hard work and the opportunity to present this technology that we've mastered since 20 years compared to others. Okay, have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.